Hello from my side. Thank you for inviting me here. So who I am, just behind the chair, you can see our modern technology makes you much younger and friendlier. By training, actually, I am a hydrogeologist, and I started to work with wetlands actually through the underground mining impact. Because we had underground mines, they draw down water, we have protected mires nearby. Do we impact those or not? But around 20 years ago, I had first project actually together with Mara Pakalna, who is the next speaker from Latvia. Thank you, Mara. With wetland restoration planning. First modern project in that sense in Estonia. And since then, I've been involved of either planning, implementation, or also monitoring. Monitoring, I'm the drone guy, let's say so. So I'm very fond of drones, how we can use it on scientific monitoring and also for public communication purposes and so on. So geologist, what does it mean? Of course, we do not know the species. We talk about longer time scales, look at the peat if it's on the ground, and my specialty is water or hydrology. So I will speak a little bit what I've seen, my insights when we have had some international cooperations and what we have in common. We have very important differences, of course. We all must kind of form and mold with all the knowledge on the site level when we want to restore some sites. And at the same time, we must, of course, know what is happening either before or after our interventions. And some words about the definitions that I already heard is problematic. And I hope I'm not cut off, so I reach the conclusions. So common ground, you actually heard it. Peatlands are important and so on. They form as an interaction of water, landscapes, climate, people, and so on, forming interesting gradients within the landscape, very smooth gradients of wetness, nutrients, and so on. And you have a very nice existing, interesting landscapes with mire habitats, different wetland habitats, common in our region, often Baltic coast where I come from. But those habitats were not valued in the past very much. We are liminal lands, some kind of borderlands everywhere, both in really in a geographical sense, but also kind of like a social sense or cultural sense. So industrial age gave finally the tools how to change them to something more useful. So we started to change them very fast in Europe. That led to a degradation, but at the same time, science and sometimes visual changes brought us to re-evaluation because we understood that we need actually those same habitats for ourselves, for humanities, for water, for carbon, for stable climate, many things that you have heard already. That led to a protection of the remaining ones, and nowadays we even do active restoration measures. We want to bring them back to at least to some functions of those landscapes. So we have a lot of common things. In every conference you hear the same things, but in a little bit different context depending on the people's background. And that's interesting, of course. Sometimes you kind of grab this little analogy or something like that that rings to you and you can use it yourself. So you kind of involves like we poorly copy each other. So hopefully the best talk remains. Of course, if you go outside of your homeland, you immediately recognize, as we just showed in Falkland Islands, you have totally different mire types. And this, of course, this is one of a picture of an Estonian poor fen, sphagnum-dominated landscapes, floodplain, rivers going through. We still have such huge complexes. In Estonia, maybe more familiar, bog pools, open dome bog in Estonia. Actually, that's quite familiar, I think, in at least some of you. At the same time, mire types, of course, are different. We know it. At the same time, the largest difference and most important is this socio-economic context of each nation and also down to the site level. And this is, of course, very different for different countries. My grandmother actually saw 4 different ideologies or statehoods in our land. And each of them had different views about wetlands, how we should use them, how we should change them. So this, of course, ends up how the borders are defined. Borders are important because we have legal backing. That is usually the most thing that you must look at the beginning. If you want to restore something, the degradation was kind of was driven by this socio-economic context, and of course, current land use also is driven by that. And this all together, this historical background, was this kind of restoration sandbox for all of us. And this is Soviet time tractor, by the way. Within that sandbox, you have your site, and you have many layers of different information. Some of them are quite easily gathered. You have borders that are, you have a vector map, you put it on a map, you see where borders are. And of course, most of them are kind of like, you can look them as a constraints. You cannot do all the things within those. Some comes from hydrology, for example. Others come from a social context, like infrastructure or whatever important places there are for the local people, for example. And when we start to see, when you go down to a state level, from a global level down to the site level, that your also natural background that we share, the common knowledge is getting fuzzier and fuzzier. At the same time, local people are interested in asking you, how does this site affect my river flow? Like really in a detail. And you usually do not know. You do not actually have that. So we need definitely this kind of easy simulation tools so that you can at least have some rough understanding how this occurs on a site level. So this is, you must mold this knowledge on a specific site to specific constraints. A lot of those information layers, you could say, are not so easy to get, especially those non-written ones, like how the locals are seeing this place, what are the common rights or common expectations, common values around that, what mire types are more valued on that specific site, or some very specific things, maybe like berries in Estonia, are very good talking point, not maybe outside in other places. So this is very context-based, and that means that the natural science doesn't help very much. We need social science helping us to gather this kind of information. It's often not written, actually. So this is a thing that you see that is happening when you go outside of protected areas, when you have a good, strong legal backing in Estonia. And this is one of the waterlands action sites, actually. This is already our intervention works have been done. And the results are uncertain. We do not know where exactly what will happen, how this wetland will regenerate. So we definitely would need some kind of like intermediate milestones that we can check what will happen, what towards what the system is moving. And of course, when it's decision point, do we need to change something or we leave it as is? So this leads to monitoring, of course, because otherwise we do not know what's happening. And UK has an excellent network of citizen science things like this eyes on a book. I've borrowed a lot of ideas from that, and we have implemented, of course, those in our sites as well. So this is a great initiative because the areas in Estonia are growing fast, very quickly, actually. Restoration sites are so big that we cannot monitor in a common botanical service anymore. At the same time, the resources that state puts into this restoration is also growing. And of course, people will start asking, actually, do you know what is happening? So we need this kind of monitoring and new ways how to look things and actually measure things, and in the end, you must make stories out of those numbers. So we have other ideas as well, like those open access field sites and so on. We do not have time to more speak about those, but citizen science is certainly the thing that I gained from my UK partners and the materials from your site. So thank you for that. Shaky common ground that we have, the definitions. Already was mentioned the peatland. What is peatland? Yes, thickness of a peat, but the peat itself is very different between the countries. As I just visited Denmark, in Denmark, what they say is a peat is not a peat in Estonia, and in Mongolia, this is definitely not peat either in Denmark and in Estonia. So it's very regionally dependent, and we usually do not actually recognize it very well because kind of we say peat, and I kind of assume it's the same thing that I'm used to in our ground sites. And also same thing with the restoration that I've seen, especially internationally, when some people we have like a gradient of things when that you can do, can mitigate the negative aspects up to the total regeneration of natural habitat. But sometimes, especially in Western Europe, you even see that when people say, okay, we did a lot of talking and draw nice maps, and then the restoration is done, or at least it is ongoing. And we are in the UK, football. You can draw nice maps and tactic talks and colorful lines, but in the end, somebody has to shoot the ball on the net. Otherwise, you will not have a success. So this Society of Ecological Restoration, where this figure comes from, has done a lot of good work, but this definitely has not reached to like everyday level yet. And so the definitions are actually quagmire in that sense, and made same words for many different things in other places. One final subtle hint for UK people: do not assume that all people at the site level speak English. They do not. The things that I went through, actually, I think the third one is most important one. The ideas, how you speak about the things, the new technological ways how to measure things, how to show things, they can make a journey quite easily. Implementation, you cannot do it usually, that you just get the solution from somewhere and put it from Denmark to Estonia. It doesn't work because of the same socio-economic differences, and these are very strongly actually within the people, and you must kind of fall towards them. And getting to know that this context is not actually very easy. And we are, as a natural science, as a geologist, I am not trained to do it actually. So we need to, and we have at least to have different disciplines working with us, like social scientists that we have seen. Personally, I have seen, if you visit especially field sites outside, it changes the way how you see your own peatlands. Especially when I first came to UK, I didn't believe that the peat can form on such slopes like in a blanket close. It was completely unnatural for me. When I went back at home, I started to see the more subtle versions of the same thing actually at my home, but I didn't recognize before. I had to come to UK to see those heavily degraded sites to get this knowledge. When somebody complains in Estonia, this restoration is so expensive, when I show a photograph that using the helicopters to get the materials up to a mountain, and everybody says, oh, yeah, good, because you are good to go. So, this is actually important, because the things are not maybe present now, but may emerge in the future. So you know where to look actually for solutions. Now I can call to Gary when I have problem with erosion, because I know that this is one of the things that you have experience that we do not have, or working with farmers, for example. Angry elephant in a room in Estonia, or will be in the room very soon. So if you want to know more about Estonian mires, what was before, how we degraded them, how we restore them, or what are people's relations through time, watch those movies. 4 movies, short ones. You have English subtitles. You can also learn a little bit Estonian. It's helpful. You never know. So follow this QR code. And the last nice Estonian wetland complex picture. It is right next to the Russian border, now considered very valuable defense asset. Thank you.